I want to go to Jeff Ballabon. Jeff Ballabon is a senior counsel with the ACLJ, oversees our office in Jerusalem, and he's there now. And Jeff, just an update first on kind of the Israeli reaction initially to President Biden's trip that he's engaged in right now. It's a complicated time because he's with an interim prime minister and the government there. There's going to be, it looks like, elections coming up again for the fifth time in 3 years. But what has been kind of the overall takeaway by Israelis?
I've been hearing things really all over the place. They're not sure what the purpose of this is. There's some cynicism that it started out as one thing, and then when the current government here disbanded and now there's an interim government, they feel that it looks just like a political move by both the president and the current interim prime minister. But in terms of substance, you know, as always, when presidents come, no matter what they say, Israel treats it as though it's friendly. And Joe Biden certainly sounds friendly. But there are some details that are troubling. So people are wondering if there's any point to this other than a political round for Joe Biden maybe to get some credibility and help back at home, where he's obviously weak.
Yep.
Yair Lapid to push his own luck for prime minister here. But it looks political more than substantive.
I mean, they signed this declaration, we're not going to have Iran have a nuclear weapon, but we know, Jeff, that the Biden administration, following the Obama administration, is putting Iran on the path. I mean, the deal that they want to get back into expires in a few years, and Iran has been violating all of the IAEA rules. We know that Iran is on a path to a nuclear weapon. So that rings pretty hollow to me when I see President Biden as a face of that, when his own administration and team are the ones still trying to get a deal with the Iranians.
You're exactly right, Jordan. You know, their language throughout, this started with Obama, President Obama, and they pushed this JCPOA, quote, Iran deal, unquote, which everyone in Israel, from the right to the left, in the government and in the opposition, agreed was a terrible idea, would definitely lead to Iranian nuclear weapons. And now I'm pretty sure the White House people just told us that Iran is basically turnkey. They're already only a few weeks away from nuclear weapons thanks to the JCPOA. And, yes, so they use the rhetoric of safety and security for Israel when they're really doing is literally guaranteeing that Iran will have nuclear weapons. And, Jordan, as I always try to remind people in America, Iran also has intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they don't need them to reach Israel.
No.
They can reach America.
It's true. This is a huge threat, not just to the region, which already is causing. It caused some positives. Because the Biden administration doesn't like to talk about the Abraham Accords. We'll get to that in a minute because of the visit to Saudi Arabia. But it has seen some new unity in the region between Israel and some of its neighbors. So in a sense, when you have a common enemy, but if you let that common enemy have just weapons that can wipe you out, wipe your entire country out, and Israel's a small country, but even the United States, when they are religious zealots who believe, part of their religious belief is that they've got to initiate the end of the world, and you do that by causing a massive attack. I think, again, this is what it confuses people a little because they just would see in the news. If they watch their local news tonight or their national news, they'll see Joe Biden standing with the Prime Minister of Israel, signing a thing saying we're never going to have Iran have a nuclear weapon. Sounds tough.
And I think, and I'm sure Jeff can speak upon this as well, is you also have a large portion of the country that also doesn't know what's going on in Israel, doesn't understand that they're in the middle of governmental turmoil. There's a lot of stuff happening that isn't really being a part of this conversation. And obviously, last time around when President Trump was in office, there's a lot of combination of Israeli love and the Trump administration. It was one of those things that kept happening to the point where they were naming train stations and things after President Trump. It became almost over the top in some ways. When you have the opposite reaction, when you have a President Biden going in, saying they're going to sign these, try to do a two-state solution, all those same rhetoric that comes up. But again, ignoring the fact that Israel itself is in a bit of political turmoil.
Yeah, and I will say, Jeff, they're pretty used to dealing and still operating and functioning this way. So unlike our country, which would not, it just wouldn't. Again, it's a country of 7 million versus our country of nearly 400 million people, and all these different things we've got set up. But Has anything come up about the the consulate in East Jerusalem? Any of those issues arising publicly, Jeff?
It's interesting. You're raising a point that, when the last president, when President Trump came here, Israelis, the streets across the board were really excited because every place he went, he made clear that America recognizes that Israel is the Jewish state and the land that it's on is the Jewish homeland. So he went to the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, a very holy site, obviously, in the old city of Jerusalem. And that was a very powerful moment. He moved the embassy to Jerusalem, and, we were there. And that was a very powerful moment. And it's important because America finally recognized publicly Israel's right, the Jewish homeland, the Jewish state's right to the Jewish homeland, in a way that Israel is the only sovereign nation that the world hadn't recognized that. And here comes Joe Biden. And I have to say, forget about his rhetoric that he loves Israel. And I don't think he hates Israel. I don't think that's the case. But he has a very leftist set of ideas. And so he's insisting, and it's interesting in this joint document, you'll notice the Israeli interim prime minister did not agree to this. Joe Biden asserted his support for two states, right? In other words, he's pushing that, not the Israelis. And Joe Biden is actually pushing the Israelis away and saying, in your capital, that our country just recognized a few years ago as the capital, in your capital, the president of a foreign country, Joe Biden, will go to one of your Jewish holy sites on the Mount of Olives, by the way, Jewish and Christian holy site, the Mount of Olives, and visit your enemies and show that they have sovereignty. And so his words are saying one thing, but his actions are saying something else. And the people who are watching that the most closely are the Arab nations who have been busy making war, peace, and normalization, and they're seeing this, and that's the danger.
Yeah, this was a bizarre statement by President Biden. I want your reaction, Jeff, because it's so common from this administration. They ignore the Abraham Accords. They ignore them completely. Take a listen, Bite 33, Biden.
The broader picture is that there are those who thought with the last administration we sort of walked away from the Middle East, that we were going to create a vacuum that China and or Russia would fill. Mm-hmm. And we can't let that happen. And secondly, the more Israel is integrated into the region as an equal and accepted, the more likely there is going to be a means by which they can eventually come to accommodation with the Palestinians down the road.
He's forgetting.
It's disgusting.
One, the Abraham Accords completely, Jeff. I mean, the fact is, Israel is much more accepted in the region because of the work of the Trump administration and actual agreements that were done, treaties that were signed, bilateral, that the U.S. helped negotiate.
You're celebrating Hanukkah in the UAE. I mean,
you have direct flights from Israel to Saudi Arabia right now. I mean,
this is insane.
Where is the mindset? And of course, it's not just the old man Joe Biden, because he's got a lot of young advisors, Jeff.
No, this is the big problem. The big problem is, and people today don't remember this, the history of this, but I'll do the short version, okay? Until the Oslo Accords, until the early 90s, and Bill Clinton, and really Hillary is the one who pushed this the first, it was clear, right-wing governments, left-wing governments, right-wing groups, left-wing groups, Democrats, Republicans, America, Israel, that the idea of a Palestinian state was anathema, that it would destroy the stability of the region forever. It would make it miserable for the Egyptians, the Jordanians, the Israelis, the Saudis. But with pressure from the Europeans and on the far, far left, they started this actually illegal negotiation with a terrorist organization, the PLO, which they now call the Palestinian Authority. It is still a terrorist organization. In fact, they just threaten more terror if they don't get what they want. They have never engaged in a peace process. So the fact is, this was a terrible blunder and was a terrible mistake. Israel no longer, officially, it is no longer Israel's policy to pursue a two-state solution. They would be open to it if there was someone to talk to them, but they know there's no one to talk to, and the other side wants war and to wipe out Israel. For some reason, and by the way, the Arab nations who created this myth that really there's another indigenous people who should have a state to replace the Jews, they know the truth, and they're over it, which is why they would just want to make peace with Israel and move ahead into the next century and grow and live well. And here come the Democrats and Western Europeans on the left, and they're pushing this narrative again and again that really the future has to do with taking this terrorist organization and giving it a state. The Abraham Accords were the exact opposite, and Biden, again, he talks the language of anti-Iranian nukes. It talks the language of peace and normalization, but his actions all refer back to giving the terrorists this land.
Jeff, as always, we appreciate it, and I appreciate Jeff being in Israel, overseeing our office, ACLJ Jerusalem.